Most Americans will inherit exactly $0 from their parents. Not because their parents don't love them, because the math was broken before they were even born. And the plan that actually works has nothing to do with waiting for a check that might never come. Two friends, Naomi and Caleb, grew up 2 houses apart on the same street. Same school, same block parties, same parents who worked regular jobs and owned modest homes. At 26, Naomi tells people, half joking, that she'll figure out retirement later because her parents own a paid-off house and she assumes that house is basically her future. Caleb, sitting next to her at the same barbecue, has never once factored his parents' house into any plan he's ever made. Same neighborhood, same families. 2 completely different financial futures already quietly forming, and neither of them has any idea yet. At the barbecue, Naomi says it out loud, almost as a joke. Worst case, I just sell the house someday. She waves a paper plate like the whole topic is settled. Caleb doesn't argue with her. He just quietly remembers that his own parents, 2 doors down from hers, have never once mentioned anything resembling a plan for him either, and at some point, he simply stopped waiting around to find out if one existed. Here's the sentence that should stop you mid-scroll. Survey after survey on household finances finds the same uncomfortable pattern. Most American households report receiving no inheritance at all, ever. And among the smaller group who do inherit something, the typical amount is nowhere close to life-changing. It's usually closer to the price of a used car than the price of a house. Meanwhile, headlines keep running stories about trillions of dollars supposedly transferring to the next generation, and somehow that math never quite lands in the average person's bank account. There's a reason for that, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. My name is Cindy, and I spend an unhealthy amount of time fact-checking the financial assumptions people quietly build their entire lives around. If you've ever told yourself, even once, that you don't need to worry too much about saving because something is probably coming your way eventually, this video might be the most useful 10 minutes you spend this year. If that sounds even a little familiar, go ahead and hit subscribe now, because the part that actually changes how you plan your own future is still ahead. Before we get into why this myth is so sticky, let me ask you something. Do you actually know what your parents' financial situation looks like? Their debts, their savings, their long-term care plans?
Most people don't. And that gap between assumption and reality is exactly where this entire problem lives. Let's talk about where the massive wealth transfer headlines actually come from. Because they're not lying. They're just describing something completely different from what most people think they're describing. Financial firms regularly publish eye-popping projections about enormous sums of money moving between generations over the coming decades. Those numbers are real. But here's the part that gets cut from the headline. That wealth isn't evenly spread across every American family. It's heavily concentrated in a relatively small number of already wealthy households, passing assets to their already comfortable children. If your family isn't in that bracket, those trillion-dollar headlines were never actually describing your inheritance. They were describing someone else's, and the math just got mistakenly applied to everyone. This is the same statistical trick that shows up anywhere money gets averaged across a huge population. When a headline calculates the average inheritance, that number gets pulled dramatically upward by a small number of enormous estates, the exact same way average net worth gets distorted the moment a handful of billionaires get added to the calculation. The median, meaning the number that represents what a person right in the middle of the pack actually receives, tells a far less dramatic story. Most people are standing closer to that median than to the headline. For most families, here's what's actually happening instead. Parents are living longer than any generation before them, which is genuinely good news, except it means a lot of what would have eventually been inherited gets spent first. Long-term care alone can run tens of thousands of dollars a year, sometimes far more, and a multi-year stay in assisted living or a nursing facility can quietly erase decades of careful saving. The house Naomi is mentally counting on isn't sitting there waiting. It might end up funding a home health aide, a hospital stay, or a final few years of care nobody budgeted for. The asset is real. The assumption that it survives intact long enough to reach the next generation is the part that's shaky. Quick gut check here, because this part matters too. Sometimes the issue isn't that the money gets spent on care, it's that there's debt sitting against the asset nobody ever talked about. A reverse mortgage, a second loan taken out during a tough year, medical bills quietly financed against home equity. None of that shows up at the barbecue. It shows up in the paperwork after the funeral, when whatever equity everyone assumed was there turns out to already belong to a lender. The house can be completely real and completely spoken for at the same time. There's also a documented gap between what younger generations expect to receive and what older generations actually plan to leave behind. Surveys on this exact topic consistently find that the generation hoping to inherit estimates a meaningfully larger number than the generation actually doing. The estate planning intends to provide. That gap isn't a rounding error. It's two completely different mental spreadsheets sitting inside the same family, and only one of them gets updated once reality eventually arrives. This is the part that actually changes how you plan your own future, so stay with it. Here's a number that should genuinely surprise you. Because people are living longer, the average age at which someone receives an inheritance, when they receive one at all, has been steadily climbing. Many people don't inherit anything until their late 50s or 60s. Read that again. The money, if it ever arrives, tends to show up after your career is mostly finished, after your kids are already grown, after the years when an extra $50,000 could have completely transformed your trajectory through compound growth. An inheritance that arrives at 60 doesn't build your retirement. It just confirms you already built it yourself, or it reveals that you didn't. This is where Naomi and Caleb's story actually starts to matter, because they represent two completely different responses to the exact same uncertainty. Caleb assumes zero, not out of pessimism, just out of math. At 26, he opens a retirement account and automates a modest monthly contribution, treating his parents' situation as entirely separate from his own. If something eventually comes his way, great, it's a bonus. If it doesn't, his plan never depended on it in the first place. Naomi assumes something, not a specific number, just a vague, comforting sense that things will probably work out because her family owns property. She contributes a little less to her own retirement account because there's always something more urgent that month, and there's no real pressure to fix that, because in the back of her mind, there's a safety net. Run that gap forward 15 years. Caleb has been contributing consistently the entire time, riding out market dips without panic because he was never counting on outside money to rescue his plan. His account has had a decade and a half of compounding working quietly in the background. Naomi has contributed sporadically, always meaning to catch up later, always assuming there'd be time or a cushion eventually. At 41, Caleb's retirement account has grown into a genuinely substantial sum, built almost entirely from years of consistent contributions plus compound growth doing the heavy lifting. Naomi's account is a fraction of that, not because she earns less, but because her plan was quietly leaning on a number that was never guaranteed to show up, and even if it eventually does, it'll likely arrive decades after she needed it most. This is the part nobody says out loud at family barbecues. Expecting an inheritance isn't a financial plan. It's the absence of one, wearing a financial plan's clothing. There's a term worth knowing for this exact pattern. Call it the inheritance mirage. From a distance, it looks like a destination, something solid you're walking toward. Get closer, and it shifts, shrinks, or disappears entirely, usually right around the time long-term care bills start arriving. The danger isn't that inheritances never happen. Some genuinely do, and when they do, they're wonderful. The danger is restructuring your own financial decisions around a number you don't control, can't verify, and have no legal right to count on until the day it actually lands in your account, if it ever does. Like any mirage, it tends to look most convincing exactly when you're furthest from actually testing it. Up close, with real account statements and real conversations, it almost always evaporates into something far smaller and far later than the picture in your head. The people who get hurt aren't the ones who never believed in it. They're the ones who built 5, 10, 15 years of financial decisions on top of it before ever checking whether it was actually there. So what does an actual plan look like instead? The kind that works whether or not anything ever arrives. It starts with a blunt but freeing assumption. Plan your entire retirement as if the number is 0. Not because you're being negative about your family, but because 0 is the only number you can build on with total confidence. If money eventually comes your way, it accelerates a plan that was already working. It never has to rescue one that wasn't. Practically, that means a few specific things. First, automate your own retirement contributions the same way Caleb did, so the decision gets made once and then quietly repeats itself without requiring willpower every single month. Second, treat any potential future inheritance the same way you treat a future bonus. You can't predict the size or timing of, useful if it shows up, irrelevant to your actual plan if it doesn't. Third, and this one matters more than people expect, have an honest, specific conversation with your parents about their actual financial situation, their long-term care plans, and whether they have anything in place to protect their savings from being entirely consumed by care costs later. That conversation feels awkward exactly once. The alternative is finding out the hard way, years from now, that the number you'd quietly been counting on simply isn't there anymore. So why does this assumption survive so easily across entire generations of otherwise financially sensible people? Optimism bias is part of it. The same mental shortcut that makes people underestimate how long a renovation will take or overestimate how much willpower next month's version of themselves will have. Family taboo does the rest of the damage. Money conversations between adult children and aging parents are uncomfortable in a very specific way, because asking too directly can sound like asking when someone is going to pass away. So the conversation just never happens, the assumption never gets tested, and an entire financial plan quietly forms around a number nobody actually confirmed. Fourth, build your own estate plan regardless of what you do or don't expect to receive. Even a basic will and a properly designated beneficiary on your retirement accounts. It feels unrelated to the inheritance conversation, but it's actually the other half of it. The healthiest families aren't the ones with the biggest estates. They're the ones who treat money as something to plan around openly instead of something to quietly assume your way through. And if you're starting from nothing, the account itself doesn't need to be complicated. A Roth IRA or your workplace retirement plan, whichever is available to you, both work perfectly well. The vehicle matters far less than the habit of putting something into it on a schedule you never have to think about twice. Here's the version of this most people never run with real numbers attached. If Caleb contributes $300 a month starting at 26, and that money grows at a fairly conservative 7% average annual return, by the time he reaches 65, he's put in roughly $140,000 of his own money across those 39 years. The account itself, thanks entirely to decades of compounding, lands somewhere north of $700,000. Nobody had to pass away for that number to exist. It came from time, consistency, and a percentage rate doing exactly what percentage rates do when you leave them alone for 4 decades. Compare that to Naomi's version of the future, the one where she's still mentally waiting at 55, still assuming the house will eventually become something usable, while her own retirement account reflects years of under-contributing. because urgency never showed up to force the issue. Even in the best-case scenario, where her parents' estate genuinely does pass to her intact, it arrives so late in her timeline that it can only patch a gap, not replace the decades of compounding she missed by waiting. The cruelest part of the inheritance mirage is that it doesn't even require anything to go wrong. Even in a completely normal, loving family, with no medical disasters and no surprises, longer lifespans alone are enough to push that money's arrival past the point where it could have done its best work. Waiting isn't a passive choice. It's an active decision to hand your own compounding years over to a transaction that hasn't happened yet and might never happen at all. If you've made it this far, here's the one thing worth doing today. Open your own retirement account or check the one you already have and ask yourself honestly whether any part of your current plan is quietly leaning on money you don't actually control. If the answer is yes, even a small amount, that's the exact moment to start treating your own number as zero and building from there. Not out of fear, out of the simple fact that zero is the only inheritance guaranteed to arrive on time, because you're the one delivering it. Picture them again, 20 years later, not at a barbecue this time, but each independently checking a retirement account on a random Tuesday night. Caleb glances at a number that's been quietly compounding since he was 26 and feels almost nothing, because it was never a surprise, just the predictable result of a decision he made decades earlier and then left alone. Naomi looks at a smaller number, does some quick mental math about her parents' age and health, and feels the first real flicker of worry she's had about this in years, because the plan she'd been mentally leaning on for 2 decades was never actually a plan. It was a guess wearing a plan's clothing, and guesses don't compound. Naomi and Caleb aren't really about inheritance at all, when you get down to it. They're about the difference between a plan and a hope dressed up to look like one.
Hope feels comfortable right up until the year it's tested. A plan doesn't need anyone else's house, anyone else's timeline, or anyone else's good fortune to work. It just needs you, starting now, assuming nothing, and building anyway. If this changed how you think about your own plan, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments whether you've ever caught yourself quietly counting on money that wasn't actually guaranteed.